You'll often need to make a photo smaller for posting on the web, whether you shot the photo as a large RAW file or as a JPEG. Let's talk for a minute about when and where to resize a photo in your web photo preparation workflow. I recommend that as a first step, you edit a photo in Adobe Camera Raw or in Photoshop and save it in Photoshop document format, .psd format, as your source file, as I showed you how to do in the last movie. Step 2, the subject of this movie, is to resize a copy of that source file using the controls in Photoshop's image size dialog box. Step 3 is to do your final output sharpening on the resized copy, as I'll show you how to do in the next movie. And step 4 is to optimize the resized sharpened copy for the web in the Save for Web and Devices window. You may be wondering why I don't recommend that you resize the photo at the same time you're optimizing it, using the height and width fields in the Save for Web and Devices window. The reason is that resizing should come before final sharpening, because the amount of sharpening depends on image size. And sharpening should come before optimizing as JPEG, so that you don't end up saving multiple times in the lossy JPEG format. So that's where resizing comes in your web photo preparation workflow. Now, let me show you how to go about resizing a photo for the web in Photoshop's image size dialog box. Here's my source file, a photo that started as a RAW file and that I brought into Photoshop from Adobe Camera Raw at a larger width and height than I need it to be for posting online. To see the current dimensions of the file, I'll go to the bottom of the document window and click on the document information area. Here I can see the size of the file in pixels, because I set my units and rulers preferences to display pixels only earlier in the course. My dimensions here are over 1,000 by 1,500 pixels, which is much bigger than I need to fill a particular area in my web design. I'd rather the file be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 200 by 100 and some pixels. So I'm going to reduce the file size by going up to the Image menu and down to Image Size. The first thing I'll do in the Image Size dialog box is look at the Resample Image command. I want to make sure that this command is checked, which tells Photoshop that I want to permanently change or resample the number of pixels in the file. And I wouldn't be able to do that in this dialog box if Resample Image were unchecked. I'll also make sure that the Constrain Proportions box is checked, so that when I change the number of pixels in the height, the width of the image will automatically change proportionately. And I generally leave Scale Styles checked too, so that if there were a layer style like a drop shadow, a bevel, or a glow on a layer in this image, the layer styles would be resized along with the image itself. Next, I'm going down to this menu at the bottom of the Image Size dialog box. From here, I can choose the formula that Photoshop will use to change the number of pixels in the file. As it says here, the bicubic sharper method is the best formula for reducing file size, because this method tries to maintain sharpness in the image while downsizing. Now I'm ready to change the pixel dimensions of this file, which I can see up here in the Pixel Dimensions area in the width and height fields. I'll go to the height field and highlight the number there, and I'm going to type 200 instead, which will change the height of the image to 200 pixels. The width changed automatically and proportionately to 133 pixels. And by the way, if I needed this photo to fit in a particular sized area that was a different ratio than 200 to 133 pixels, I would have to go out of this dialog box and crop the image to get it to fit. Up at the top of the dialog box is a line that reports the file size of the image, or the approximate amount of space that the file will take up in memory. Notice that the file size is going to be significantly reduced as a result of my reducing the number of pixels of width and height. The size of this file had been a whopping 4.52 megabytes, and after reducing the width and height, it will be only 77.9 kilobytes. Now, what about the document size area of this dialog box? I'm going to ignore everything in the document size area: width in inches, height in inches, and resolution. You may be surprised to hear that it doesn't matter what number is in the resolution field here. That's because when I'm resizing an image for the web, all I have to worry about is the pixel dimensions, the number of pixels across and down. I don't have to bother changing resolution because in this dialog box, resolution means what it says here, the number of pixels that would be allocated to every inch if this file were being measured in inches. And the only time that I'll measure a file in inches is if I'm going to print it. Since I'm not printing, but rather preparing this photo for the web, none of the fields in the document size area matter, and I can leave the resolution field set to whatever number is in there. So now I'm going to click OK, and that reduces the size of the photo. I'll save the resized photo in Photoshop format so that I've got an edited, layered version that I can come back to later if I need to make any changes after I've published the JPEG version of the file. I'll go up to the File menu, and instead of choosing Save, I'll choose Save As, so that I don't end up saving over the original, larger source file. In the Save As dialog box, I'll navigate to the desktop, and I'm going to go up to the Save As field and add the word Web to the end of the file name so that I can identify this file later as a version of the file that I've resized for the web. I'll make sure that Layers is checked and the format is set to Photoshop so that I get a .psd file that preserves the layers that I've added to the file. Finally, I'll click Save, and I'll click OK. Now, out on my desktop, I have the smaller PSD file that's just like the source file, except that it's been reduced in size down to 133 by 200 pixels. I'm going to open that file in Photoshop, and then I'm going to reopen my original source file located in the 0702 exercise files folder. I'll go up to the Arrange Documents menu and choose the 2-up configuration so you can see both files next to one another. And when the files are viewed at the same zoom percentage, in this case 33.3%, you really can see how much bigger the original source file is as compared to the copy that I just resized for the web. And to get a better sense of how big the web file really is, I'm going to click its tab to make it active, and then I'm going to double-click the Zoom tool to set the web file to 100%. And that gives me a better sense of how much size this image will take up on a monitor that's set to the same display resolution as my monitor. Now, this file isn't totally ready for the web yet because it's still in PSD format. The next steps in my photo preparation workflow would be to sharpen this downsized PSD file, which I'll show you how to do in the next movie, and then optimize it as a JPEG in the Save for Web and Devices window for posting on the web.